of incentive and motivation in learning. Motives are inner psychological drives that impel people to action. Strong factors in learning are motivation, attitude, and anxiety. Let's take a look at each factor individually, starting with motivation. Motivation. Two types of motivation that affect students in the classroom are instrumental motivation, like money, career, and power, integrative motivation, which is identify with a culture or a community. Within the two types of motivation listed above are intrinsic and extrinsic factors. Intrinsic motivation is self-motivated. Extrinsic motivation are other external motivators such as a boss, a parent, promise of a job, etc. During a training session, students are motivated by positive feedback from the qualified instructor. Students also find autonomy, critical thinking ability, and self-fulfillment to be motivating factors in learning. As a qualified instructor, you will see students get on a roll during rules of the road and chart navigation. Getting on a roll is another way of saying students are being motivated by understanding material, and it's an adrenaline rush to feel autonomy, critical thinking ability, and self-fulfillment. QIs enhance the motivation of students by teaching a class that's relevant to the student. Encouraging students to take responsibility for their own learning can increase motivation as well. These four factors play a role in the motivation of students: supportive environment, appropriate level of difficulty, meaningful learning objectives, moderation, and variation in the motivational strategies. Attitude. Attitude is a settled way of thinking or feeling about someone or something, typically one that's reflected in a person's behavior. A student's attitude influences their behavior in the classroom. Attitudes in the classroom are also semi-contagious and can be spread or partially spread between students. An instructor may notice that a student has a sudden shift in attitude towards a certain topic or problem set. Single events that happen in the classroom can dramatically affect a student's attitude. For example, if a student spends too long on a chart navigation problem and keeps getting the same incorrect result without asking a question, the student's attitude may be affected negatively by this event. The qualified instructor needs to keep a close eye on every student and notice attitude shifts. If a distinct shift of attitude is noticed, it should be addressed as soon as possible. It does not need to be called out in front of the class, but should be addressed directly with the affected student. I had a student once in Pennsylvania, and this guy, he's doing set and drift problems, he's doing pretty well. And it was a unique class to start with. And this guy kind of thought he was like sent from heaven to give tours of a vineyard. He was a cool guy. It was pretty funny, right? And then I had another guy who was really smart and just jammed through the problems, and another guy who was not the sharpest tool in the shed, but a very hard worker and could get through the problems. So this guy in the middle, he's doing set and drift problems, and all of a sudden he stands up and he's like, fuck, and he takes his pencil and he chucks it across the room and he like grabs his hair. And I walk over there, I'm like, hey man, what's going on? Let's take a look at this. And I grab his chart and start going over his work. I'm like, okay, start point, good. You're on this course, your end point should be here, but you ended up here. Yeah, good to go. You're all set, nothing's wrong. And this guy just sits down and starts laughing at himself, and I can see the relief come over his face. And the whole problem set was right, and he's just freaking out about the problem looked a little different, so he thought he did it wrong, right? But this is an example of just extreme attitude shifts based on single events that happen during class. And some of them are super apparent, like the example I just gave, and others are not apparent. You just see the guy sitting there struggling, getting more anxious. It's good to get over there, say, hey, just touch base, get on the same page, see what's going on. It can go a long way. It's just walking around the room, doing like physical proximity to people, asking them how it's going. If you don't ask, a lot of times people won't tell. They need to open up a little bit. Let's keep going. The previous example was a very specific event that created a short-term change in attitude. Let's take a look at a more meaningful event in a student's life which can affect the attitude of the student. Say the student never graduated 10th grade or finished high school. That event sets up the student's attitude towards classroom education. The student's current attitude, combined with the knowledge that they're not good at school, may lead to self-defeating behaviors and bad attitude. A student such as this is likely to have behavioral outbursts during class and distract the other students or create an uneasy feeling in the classroom. You'll get full-grown men, women, just full-grown adults that can have meltdowns during your class. And a lot of times you'll have to, guide that student out of the classroom, away from the other students, into the hallway. Just take a walk with the student and touch base with them and say, hey, how are we doing? I mean, there have been instances where we just had to refund a student that just could not hold it together psychologically. They had some baggage. In other cases, you take a student like this out in the hallway and they're like, oh man, I'm sorry, am I kicked out of class? Am I done? Do I have to go home? They're used to feeling this. They're used to not succeeding in some cases. And it can be challenging. You just say, hey, no, just hold it together. If you feel like you need to have an outburst, please do it outside the classroom. Try to hold it together and come back, and we'll just keep going, just one step at a time. A qualified instructor needs to implement a simple study plan for students to help them along their learning journey. Structure and guidance help students without good study habits keep a positive attitude towards learning. As students learn material and it's reinforced positively, the student gains momentum. They gain focus, they start to enjoy the process, and they feed off of other good study habits and good attitudes of other students. Anxiety. Mild anxiety may help students stay focused and pay close attention in class, but too much anxiety can take away from learning. There's two different types of anxiety QIs may see from students. Facilitating anxiety, which assists performance. Debilitating anxiety, which impedes performance. Students may experience anxiety because they feel they're not showing themselves in the best light when fumbling with problems or not understanding material. Qualified instructors, on the other hand, may experience anxiety because they're fumbling with an explanation, or if students are not understanding a concept. The student's anxiety and the qualified instructor's anxiety feed off of each other. If anxiety is present in the classroom, it may be time for a walk or a topic shift to material that's comfortable for both students and qualified instructor. One thing everyone has in common in the classroom is an affinity for boats. A good sea story can go a long way in settling students and qualified instructors in the classroom. Bring everybody down a notch. Anxiety and competitiveness are linked. Take the following situation, for example. You have a group of 5 students and they spontaneously form 2 groups during chart navigation portion of the course. One group has 3 people and the other 2. The 2 groups go through the chart navigation portion of the course neck and neck, doing practice problems and quizzes online. Competitiveness is driving the 2 groups through mild anxiety and helping the 2 groups get through material faster, therefore motivating them to get the right answers to quizzes. In this way, they're appropriately motivated by anxiety to do better in class. The objective here is to increase motivation and decrease anxiety in ways that facilitate the learning process. And that's about all. It was a good story, huh? Wow, we need to smile on camera and show this thing in a great light.